All right, we're live.
Okay.
Thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So the first question I have on Facebook is, I thought was an interesting question because this is sort of a different kind of Stephen King book. So I think there's a difference as to when you're talking about whether this was a good book and whether this is a good Stephen King book. And maybe both of those, the answer is yes, but I don't think they're the same question. Because this was sort of his first truly crime noir, no supernatural. And I wasn't really 100% expecting it, since we had started with The Outsider and that had a supernatural edge to it. So I kind of was waiting for the book to have some sort of supernatural something in it, and it never did. So I'm wondering what you guys think.
I thought about this question. I was wondering what makes a book a Stephen King book, in your opinion?
It's a good question.
Is that for me or for anybody?
No, it was for you. That was for you. I'm sorry. Jessica, for you.
Because it was my question, right? So I think it doesn't always have to be supernatural, because I really enjoy, like, when we did his just character driven, like, psychological stuff. The body, that whole arc. I'm having trouble remembering what the one was called.
Apt
with
pupil,
the Nazi, bad pupil.
Apt pupil.
Very psychological.
Yeah.
Shawshank.
So for me, I think that one of the big things about Stephen King is his characters. He always develops them and spends a lot of time developing his characters. And I would say he usually, in his full novels, has some sort of supernatural arc. That being said, I'm not going to answer the question, but that to me is his main thing, is building the characters, character driven.
So you don't think this one was character driven?
No, that's what I said. I didn't want to answer the question.
So
as to whether it was a good SK book or not. Do you want me to answer it? I think it is.
I think you know. Okay. I was going to say, I think you know what my answer is then. I think the answer is yes, this is a good SK book, because I think it does all of the things that he does well. And, I threw out the need for the supernatural because, I thought of Shawshank. I thought of The Body. I thought of Apt Pupil. Yes, those are all novellas. They're not full novels. And I tried very hard to come up with a novel that doesn't have it. And the closest I came was 112263. There's no supernatural, but it's time travel. But really nothing that happens in the day-to-day is really supernatural. So that was my long answer. My short answer is yes, it's a good Stephen King book.
I agree with you. I just thought it was an interesting thing to think about, because I wasn't expecting it at all. And then I sat at the end of the book thinking, is this Stephen King that I love, or is this just a good book? And I think it's because of how he developed the characters and how it went on. That being said, I think we're going to be doing a lot of comparison to The Outsider. The Outsider felt more Stephen King-like to me, but this didn't feel not Stephen King. It just felt The Outsider felt like it had all the crime and everything that he does and the characters, but it also had that element to it as well. But the whole psychological small town, although this really wasn't that small of a town, but that small town feeling as far as it could be anybody, like the ice cream man type of Stephen King like thing was still there.
I have to say, one of the things that reading these books and then talking about them with you all really let me appreciate is his ability to create such memorable, strong characters. I think when I read his works in the past when I was younger and sort of first read some of his stuff, it was too easy to sort of get caught up in sort of the superficial horror or supernatural and not really appreciate the work he was doing underneath. But now by talking about it and sort of focusing on all of these different aspects, I've really grown to appreciate what he does. Like every book we sit down and we talk about, like we go through the characters because they're so strong and they have such interesting aspects and motivations and backgrounds and stories. So then for me, sort of, as you both sort of agreed, it seemed perfectly natural as a Stephen King book, despite the fact that there's no real supernatural element, because there was that same sort of feel to it with the characters, with the setting, despite the fact that it was a slightly different story than maybe some of the other ones.
Mr. Anderson.
I agree. I think characters were the strongest part of it. It does kind of come out of nowhere. So it's a good question, Jessica, because we've read so many Stephen King books, and this doesn't really feel like any of them. And I think that was part of its charm and part of what made it so interesting right away. It's a good book. I think what I thought of when you were describing, how the process is kind of, because it's done the same thing for me. It's kind of helped us understand, like, wow, he really does a great job at character creation and character building. And that reminded me of the fact that what's really different about this one is the structure. It's like, oh, now we're going to know it's a whodunit, but we know whodunit. But we're just waiting until the other characters figure that out. And the tension is so palpable and so real. And I love that. I love that he found a way to do that in a book, and that he made the villains so memorable, and he made the heroes so memorable and alive.
I think we'll talk about it more, but there was certainly a horror aspect of this book. Sort of the horribleness that was the villain, and also everything that he went through, everything that was done to his brother, just his whole mindset, and how he, all the first person that they did in the that he did with Mr. Mercedes with Brady was just horrifying, like with the tension, and you were just like, oh my god, he just has very little respect to no respect for human life. He's just gonna go murder all these tweens and just doesn't care. And the baby and all of this stuff, and you're just like, there is that horror, psychological horror that you get with King. Mostly, in his short stories, it's just sort of he adapted whodunit. So
that's I mean, do we all kind of agree, though? It is a good book, and it is a good Stephen King, even though it's sort of on the fringes of Stephen King.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm interested to see where it's going to go in the next 2 books, with it ending on this outsider.
Right?
yeah, I don't know if everybody else has read the other 2 books, but I haven't read it yet, so I don't know where it's gonna go.
I think Eric, of the 4 of us, I believe Eric's the only one who's ventured forward so far, right?
Yeah, I got hooked. So I finished Finders Keepers and I started End of Watch, and
Wow.
yeah, it does not disappoint. Spoilers, it does not disappoint. But
It has taken all my willpower not to start Finders Keepers, but I was like, I need to wait because I don't want to start confusing the two and saying,
right,
spoiling things during the chat. So
yeah,
because
Exactly.
I wound up buying them all together, so like I have them ready to go.
Yeah.
Me too.
There you
I
go.
have them all, and I just waited. I was like, no, I have to wait until we have this conversation, and then I can.
You guys have so much more willpower than me. I had them all sitting right here.
I'm still stuck in the middle of Storm of Swords.
Oh, my
I'm
husband
struggling.
loves Storm of Swords.
I'm struggling. But yes, I will be picking up. I might set it aside because I can't remember where I was when I'm like 3 chapters out. So it's like I don't think it'll matter if I come back to it a month from now or 2 months from now. I'm at sea right now.
Yeah.
So,
he really, really wanted me to, but I couldn't. Okay. Moving on. Bill Hodges. It was interesting because they, Holly was talking about him so much in The Outsider, so we kind of got like a picture of him, or at least I did in my head. And then anyway, we'll go to the question. So I wrote it as white hero, or was he kind of like the Ahab of this book, or somewhere in the middle?
Well, Mike, I remember something you said last time, which rang really true for me too. Like, I kind of knew from the beginning that Brendan Gleeson played him, so that's immediately who I thought of, and it's never left. So I had that visual, and because I like Brendan Gleeson, and he's tends to be like a good guy in a lot of stuff. I had this image of him as like this really great, like bright soul sort of thing, even though he has this dark history, failed marriage, alcoholism, and he's retired and contemplating suicide. Like, I kind of had that image of, yeah, but he's great. So, but the Ahab part is really interesting because I think a lot of the end of Mr. Mercedes is geared towards making us realize, oh yeah, this was kind of all his fault. Like, a lot of the bad stuff that happened. I don't know if he ever really felt the full weight of those consequences, but that.
What bad stuff was his fault?
So Janie, I think, was technically his fault. Not that, like, because he was provoking Brady is kind of, and that he didn't want to divulge anything to Pete. I think that was kind of supposed to be his first mistake. And his second mistake is that he also didn't tell Pete or the security staff until Brady was already there. But that was sort of like, it just ended up being a really heroic standoff instead of real consequences.
Right. And I now that you say that, I guess I was just being like, yeah, okay, yeah, Janie, but I'm like, nothing else bad happened. Like, it's Monday morning quarterbacking. You're going, but you're right. If the bomb had gone off, so yes, if Brady had succeeded,
so it's like he got off easy.
Yeah.
So,
but did he? Heart attack or whatever was going on there.
True that.
I have to wonder though. I feel like that's, the type of story that was being told. I feel like, hold on, sorry. Excuse me. I feel like in this type of story where you have sort of the retired detective or the person who's sort of not an official authority, going Lone Ranger. Any of the consequences, anything that bad happens along the way, well, yeah, it could have been prevented if they'd gone to authorities. I don't know. I mean, I don't really lay it as his feet in the sense of like it's just part of the way it goes. If you're going to be the protagonist of the story and do the thing, and you're not technically a law enforcement official and doing things in the regular course of business, then yeah, bad stuff may happen, and maybe technically you could have avoided it, but I don't really put that on him. I mean, he was reached out to, and he responded, and yeah, okay, Janie drove his car, and I don't know, saying that was his fault or ascribing some kind of fault, even at a sort of superficial level, seems too strong to me.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like it's close to the vein of, well, she was wearing a really short skirt, so she was asking for it.
That's true.
It does feel like, not quite to that extent, but it does feel a little bit like, almost like victim blaming. Brady reached out to him, and yeah, seeing the outcome. Had he not responded, would the cops have ever found Brady? What would Brady have done?
Exactly.
It's a fictional story. You can't what if the real life. So how do you what if?
Yeah.
I used to have this argument with my sister. She would always be like, I don't like movies and books because I think it's just so ridiculous that all this stuff happens to these people. And I'm like, well, the book's about them because that stuff happened. It's like, it's not like you have just like, I'm going to write a book about Bob, and Bob just goes through his life, and he's an accountant, and he pushes pencils around all day. We read a book about Bob because Bob saved 15 people when a gunman came into his office. Like that's why the book is there. It's not just because it's Bob.
True.
What
you have to have conflict.
Potter the Wizard. That's ridiculous.
So it's very difficult to Monday morning quarterback to because we know what happened, and he's the hero. He's my hero. I love Bill Hodges.
Yeah, right. I love Bill Hodges too.
So for me, I think it's somewhere in the middle, right? I was like totally on board with Bill Hodges and everything he did up until he figured out who the guy was. And then I was like, whoa, now, buddy. You're an ex-cop. And that's when I thought I kind of equated it to the Ahab. Like, you just want to go after your white whale, and you want to be the one to go and get him. And I'm not sure that's right. Like, yeah, like so many things could have gone wrong, and I get that that's, not what happened in the story, but it was also really, really close to what happened in the story. And you could have, like, prevented that from even getting that close to happening. And as an ex-cop, I'm kind of like, and they kept saying over and over in the story, well, like, this is our case and this is our guy and we're going to be the one to take him down. And I'm like,
yeah, sounds like ego.
No.
But
maybe like once Janie got killed and once they figured out who he was, and I was kind of like, maybe that's when you're like, hey, best friend Pete, I know who this guy is, and I know he has this plan, and there's thousands of people involved. Maybe you should take it over at this point. I'm probably gonna head over there just in case. I'm just saying. Like, I don't know. I was just a little bothered by it.
I can't remember the timeline now. Did he figure out the identity before or after the giant gang bust?
That's what I was going to bring up. So, being an ex-cop and playing devil's advocate here.
Are you an ex-cop?
No. him being an ex-cop. Sorry,
Oh.
Bill being an ex-cop.
You're an great conversation to have.
Sorry.
You've played one on TV, so
I have played a cop a couple times. I have played a cop. Yes.
there you go.
Well, that's good
Playing
enough for
devil's
me. Tell me
advocate.
what you do.
Playing devil's advocate with Bill being an ex-cop,
Yeah.
knowing about the bust, I think he was concerned that not enough attention would be paid to what was going on, and how convinced were they that he, like, I'm not sure when they figured out where he was and what was going to happen. That's where I'm a little iffy on the timeline.
Yeah, I don't think they knew what was going to happen. They didn't find his house until Discount Electronics.
Right.
They didn't find
Yeah.
Discount Electronics. Jerome was involved.
Up until they got hacked into those computers, he still thought it was going to be on the weekend or the following week because of that "I'm going to have a nice weekend" message.
Yeah, they didn't know the urgency.
Yeah, it wasn't until they got into those computers did they realize, oh shit, it's tonight, Thursday night, and that, I mean, that took Holly hours worth of trying to figure out the password, and she only got it because there was a note on the back of a photo while she swiped. Like, I mean, it's one of those things. Like, would they have been able to get into the computers, on that day, the day of the big bust? Like, there's no way in hell they would have figured that stuff out.
Exactly. They would not have gotten that far. And then once they knew what was going on, once they knew that, he had this bomb, and you don't storm that place with cops because, as soon as he gets alerted, you don't pull a fire alarm. You don't pull, because it's just
the bomb. A
lot of people are going to die.
Yeah.
So as far as the Ahab thing goes, him about to die in the hallway is the only thing that puts him in the Ahab column for me. Did he have another choice? I guess he could have kind of sat it out and sent Jerome and Holly. Maybe he wanted to be, that's iffy for me. That behavior is the only thing that puts him more Ahab for me. I think he did the right thing in not alerting Pete, because I think it would have gone bad.
And to be fair, he was ready to give up. It was only once she actually got into the computer that he didn't he call at one point? I thought he called right near the end. I can't remember now.
Well, I think
nobody was there anymore. And then she finally got into the computer
because they were at the bus. Oh.
Right. I think when he called Pete, he was about to turn everything over and be like, Pete, I'm my bad. You guys got to take the reins. And then that's when he realized that saying anything wouldn't do good at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't remember if he actually called or he said that if she can't get into the computer in 1 hour. So there was some sort of deadline.
Yeah, he gave her, I think, a couple hours, but then I think he made the call. I did appreciate the fact that there were consequences, not harsh or severe ones, but he was sort of given a slap on the wrist for running amok. And that, I feel like, is something you don't see with these stories a lot. They kind of end with the celebration of the killer being caught or whatnot. And I mean, yeah, he did break the law, and he did do, all sorts of extra legal things. And, they recognized he did good at the end of the day, so they didn't, throw him in jail forever. But, he wasn't included in the commendation to the city, and he was kind of pushed off to the side. And I think that I did appreciate that touch at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Yep. All right. So, Mr. Mercedes, what the fuck? Discuss. That's what I have as number 3.
Stephen King is so good at writing compelling, horrible people. It's just you don't sympathize with him, but you kind of sort of see where how he got warped, and just in a way that you would never think that by the end of this book that you're like, holy crap, I have anything more than utter loathing for this person. And it's just such good writing to do that.
Yeah. And writing from his perspective helps.
Yeah.
Yes. I guess, I mean, I feel like there have been other bad guys or other people that have done bad things who I sympathized or I empathized with. Brady didn't do it for me. I don't know why, but he didn't cross over into that camp. I feel like Harold from The Stand, I feel so sorry for, like, you know, even Flag, I kind of write him off as like, this is what he was created to do kind of thing. The not the outsider, but the other guy with the cancer and the alcoholism, the cop and the outsider, like him, I even felt for. Brady, I go, yeah, he screwed up. I get why he screwed up. Yeah, that's not cool that his mom's relieving his headache. But I wasn't ever like, yeah, I get you. I'm sorry, buddy, but you know, I don't know. He didn't do it for me. I did not. He never crossed over into those wounded victim villains for me.
Yeah, I never really felt bad for Brady. I sympathized like a couple moments. Like, it is hard on a poor family having a disabled child. I get that. But then, yeah, all the sexual stuff really threw me out of the, like, man, just, that's your mom. Like, any sort of sympathy evaporates as soon as he starts looking at her while she's drunk and asleep. You know, it's just too much.
But then, like, it was the mom from, like, the beginning who was like, oh, I'm so glad it wasn't you, like, honey boy, like, right after the kid, Frankie was choking and was in the
True.
being worked on, and that's like when he got his like first like reaction, and I was just like, oh god, that mom. And it was just like, so I mean, I definitely, actually, the sexual stuff was the only thing that made me feel bad for the kid. He was that young, where I was like, wow, at that young and your mom is already sexualizing you, well, you're going to be screwed up. Now, but there's a lot of screwed up kids who had screwed up childhoods who don't murder their brothers and then murder a lot of people. So,
hey,
you know,
it was wait, he only killed like 8 people, right? Wasn't it? Like, how many did he actually kill?
He was gonna bomb a whole
17.
stadium or 8.
He tried. He tried to kill a lot of people.
You know what? You're right. We can only charge him for the crimes he did.
Right? Right.
No, you can charge for the attempt.
There we go.
But his head's caved in. We're good. It's like he's, you know, paid the price.
And you know, the mom. Oh God, what happened to the mom? I didn't see that coming at all. I don't know if anybody.
No.
That was great.
That was excellent.
You mentioned the horror element. That was the horror element for me.
So awful. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't upset she was gone, but it was just.
Yeah, gross.
Yeah. But the whole Frankie, everything that happened with the little boy, I was just so upset about, and just like, and I think that had a lot to do with why he was the way he was. Like Stephen King said, wrote it multiple times, that he dreamt of his brother. He had all these dreams of his brother, and you know, so I think he had some sort of guilt that was just festering, and as he should have, guilt.
But see, it was that guilt that sort of set him apart from, and now I can't remember the guy's name from I believe it was the really sociopathic one who basically they said went in and killed off his brother in the night. The implication was like the father may have known about it because of the wet footprints, but didn't really do anything about it. Is it Patrick? Was Patrick his name?
Yeah,
Patrick
Patrick.
Hostetler or something like that.
Yeah. And he showed no remorse, no guilt. He was the truest of sociopaths, whereas Brady was evil, no doubt, but there was something there. Something, like I said, just a smidge more than just total loathing, because there was just something there more than that showed a little bit of depth to him and a little bit of not just a caricature of, just pure embodiment of evil, sociopathy, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is what made him so compelling as the villain. It's not necessarily that he was sympathetic, but there was just more humanity to him than I think it could have been in the hands of a less talented writer. It could have easily slipped there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the one thing, and I don't know why, but the one thing that stopped me from really, feeling for or whatever you want to call it with Brady was I viewed him as being so smart, and the way he manipulated everybody from what's her name that he worked with at Discount City, knowing when he had to nod and when he just from the beginning, I'm like, this guy's a jackass. Just talk to people. I guess that's the thing that really turned me off to him from him from the get-go. If you're going to be a sociopath, I feel like you're not necessarily read those cues, or you're not good at reading those cues. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he wasn't my favorite, but he was a good villain. He was a bad guy.
Not to read those cues is what you're saying.
Sorry?
It was like he was choosing not to read those cues, not that he couldn't read those cues.
He was pretending not to read those cues.
Yeah, okay.
I guess that's the way I felt.
No,
like that,
accurate.
Yeah, what's his name? Never mind. I don't want to go on a tangent. But
well, the tangent I was going to bring us on was Frank Dodd from Dead Zone. Was another mother fucked him up. He was
good call.
Very disturbed. You kind of see through his eyes every once in a while, and you kind of step into his rain boot shoes or whatever. But Brady's leagues more sympathetic than that character. And I think that was what I was expecting. And then when you see the childhood stuff and the mom being super weird, that definitely made him more human and more this could have gone a different way for you, kid. But I never got all the way to feeling bad for the guy.
I guess now that you bring him up, the way I remember it, all of the sexual stuff that was done to him was a form of punishment, wasn't it?
Right. Frank Dodd, it was the
clothespins and stuff. Yeah. Whereas Brady wasn't punished sexually. Right. It was gratification.
Sure.
I have to go back and look at the two of them again, which I'm probably not going to do anytime soon. But looking at that, one being punished and one being pleased,
Two different types of behavior shaping.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So, how did everyone feel about the whole incident with Frankie? Did you
Frankie,
feel
you said?
Yeah, with Frankie, feel that made you empathize or sympathize for Brady and the mom, or did it make you go the other way?
Yeah, Daddy's on the telephone.
Melody Brady.
She just came in the door. She's going to bed.
Aww. Good night, Melly.
My Melly's asleep too.
You could sympathize with somebody who finds their whole world sort of shaken up by what happened to Frankie, in the sense of the choking and then the disability that resulted. And like that's got to be incredibly hard for even the most stable people. And incredibly difficult to deal with, and incredibly life-changing and life-draining. It's then the reaction to it that puts a damper on the sympathy, because it's one thing to sympathize with somebody in difficult circumstances, but their ultimate solution. First he started hitting him and reacting violently towards him, and then ultimately with his mother's suggestion, down the stairs he went, and that's obviously where the major problem is. So you initially start feeling a smidge of sympathy because you can see how hard that situation would be in the first instance, but then when violence is the answer, that's where the sympathy evaporates very quickly.
Yeah, I guess the only times I felt myself even having like a twinge of feeling for Brady were when he seemed to be remorseful for what happened to Frankie. There were I'm thinking of like
picture
2
on
or
his lap.
3. Yeah, that bordered for me. I was sort of like, is this just a convenient, was it just convenient that he had the picture and like it just helps him, manipulate the people he's trying to manipulate. The picture was a little bit much for me, but I feel like there were a couple times, I don't know if they were dreams or just him talking. Those were the moments when it was him alone. That's when I'm like, he did love his brother and he really feels bad. And he, it still wasn't enough to push me over into, liking the guy.
Well, yeah. I get your point about using the picture at the concert, but that was the picture, if I remember correctly, that was on his nightstand the whole time. So it wasn't the use of it at the end, yes, was sort of convenient. But I think the fact that he kept it around all that time up until that point was part of that whole, there was something deep in him that was sorry or that loved his brother or something.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me for 1 minute.
I think part of what I think the whole sequence, I actually flagged it and read it a couple of times, even though I thought it was one of the most difficult parts to read in the book for me. But it was really good, honest Stephen King writing where he just talks about, sometimes I love my brother, sometimes I hate my brother, sometimes I kiss my brother, sometimes I hit my brother, and then talking about exactly what he was about, the dreams and keeping the picture, and then going right into how his fantasies about killing people. So it's just like really feel, people who have, I think, John, like you said, who would be in that situation would honestly feel, especially like a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old who, is just stuck in the situation and it isn't apparent, but is, on the other hand, told that they're the man of the house. And then it all gets kind of wrapped up in these dreams and, regret and feeling sorry and his psychosis. And I just thought it was really good writing. And so I flagged it as just like excellent Stephen King writing.
Good example.
Yeah.
So, let's see. What do I got? Oh, Holly. So yeah.
Yay.
I know, I love Holly. But she was so different. So I'm like, wow. So Holly in The Outsider versus Holly in this book. Thoughts?
I mean, she lived through 2 other adventures, right? Before
Yeah.
she got to Outsider. So I think the Holly, I was actually really surprised because you knew that you were going to meet Holly, but I didn't catch on that that was Holly until like basically she was formally introduced for like the 3rd time or something. Like it was really late, it felt. Because you kind of knew that, was it Aunt Charlotte or somebody? One of them. She had a daughter that was like weird, but I was imagining that daughter as like a 15-year-old.
Yeah, the way they were describing her.
Yeah, and then when it turns out that she's middle-aged, I'm like, oh, Holly. But like, I just didn't catch on. It seemed like a totally different person. So I liked that the origin was that, and I thought it was really well developed. Then looking at it in Outsider, I mean, she's obviously pretty well put together, a lot of the same mannerisms. She seemed very psychic in The Outsider. Like she had all these premonitions, and like she knew exactly which movie to pick out, and that turned out to be the thing that it was. Like, so that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, we talked about that when we discussed The Outsider. Like, how did she do that? She was just like, this is the movie. We didn't know if that was just like a Stephen King shortcut. Yeah, Holly thing.
I guess I'm remembering that differently because I don't remember. I just remember it being like when she found out what was going on. I remember her being like, I can't believe I picked this movie. Like it was almost that it was fate, not psych. What's the word? What's the word for
Like
psychicist? What's a psychic? Like it's psychic that
I don't know.
Psychic vibes. I didn't look at it as
Could be precognition. Could be.
Okay, precognition. Thank you. That's a better word than psychicism.
That's a pretty fun
psychic
word.
Is a person. What is this? I don't know what the.
See, now I think I know what you're trying to get at, and I can't think of it either.
I don't know.
But in The Outsider, it's like she had seen all of these Mexican movies like a billion times and was like, aha, I know. It's almost like she had, I mean, I know that she mentions in this movie that she, in this book that she keeps a movie log because she talks about movies a couple of times. Mm-hmm. So it could be that she looked at her log, but that wasn't really mentioned. It's just the way that it was written in The Outsiders we had mentioned, it was just like, you talked about this, and I know the perfect movie to illustrate this point. And it could be that it's because of the log, but it was just like seemed really convenient at the time. But
and then she had a couple like, you know, when the sort of climax happens in Outsider, and they're sort of in the parking lot area. Mm-hmm. Like she kind of knew not to go over there, and she, you know, she was very in the moment, and then everything was very logical and like precise when they got in the mines. It just seemed like it was hinting at she had all of this wealth of knowledge that it didn't really seem like she should have. Mm-hmm. But I guess, you know, I don't know what happens in the last book or anything either, and you know, there's probably something else that's going on, but she could just be really, really good, like Monk or some other TV detectives, at just like paying attention to the right details. Like you said, maybe the log did it.
I mean,
maybe
here's.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Mark. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Maybe it is one of those things like where when you're not concerned, or that part of your brain that doesn't work with social cues or other people isn't engaged. Like if your brain's not worried about that stuff, you're able to pick up on those other cues.
Hints. Yeah. Sure.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's just a guess. What were you going to say, John?
Well, what I was going to say was that in this book, I mean, look, she clearly has come a long way from Mr. Mercedes to Outsider, but at the same time, even in this book, she was able to at the very end in the climax, assess the scene, figure out what you need to do it. Whereas, when she's first introduced, I don't think, having not, if you didn't know what was coming, I don't know that you necessarily would be able to say if you just meet her the first time and say, oh, by the way, at the end of this, she's going to be able to take down the bad guy by braining him, while he's sitting on a gigantic bomb in the middle of a concert.
Yeah.
So I think the seeds are there, and whatever it is she's got, whether it's the sort of, as Mike just said, the difference in sort of the way her brain works allows her to pick up different things or analyze things differently, or some kind of supernatural influence that's sort of there in the ether that's not really explained or ever really delved into. I think it's consistent. It seems consistent, although it's stronger in the outsider, but I think I just attribute that to sort of her growth. I mean, clearly there's growth, and it'll be interesting to see the growth over the next 2 books that leads to the outsider. But I mean, you can sort of see it in Mr. Mercedes anyway, even at the onset.
Yeah. I was happy with the way that the book, at the end at least, like, it took me a while to realize that was Holly, because at the very beginning, the way the parents were treating her was so childlike and fragile, and she had such like a lack of confidence in herself that I didn't get it at first. But by the end of the book, I really liked the way that parents were like, "Oh, you can't handle this. You just can't." And she's like, "Fuck that. I can do it. I can handle this. I can do it on my own." And I felt like it was a really good kind of message for mental health issues. And I was just like, yeah, rock on that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. The parents sucked. I was
like a Mr. and Mrs. Dursley situation there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get her out of there.
We don't like you. And she's an adult.
Nice. Yeah.
Go away.
But I think it all goes to show all sort of the characters that, the impact parents can have on their children, no matter what their age. And, because you take a look at somebody like Jerome, who has a good home life, a stable family, strong parents, but, and how he seems to be flourishing, taking his sort of natural smarts and abilities, but pushing them in such a positive way versus a Brady. And then, versus a Holly who has some natural limitations that the other two may not have, but it's clear that her parents don't encourage and don't support and made it worse instead of better.
Yeah.
Had to deal with a lot.
So I agree with everything I heard. I think except for one thing, the fat guy wasn't her dad, was he?
No, he was the aunt's brother. I think they were
okay,
brother and sister.
Brother, sister, yeah.
Her mother, her mother stands in, even if it.
Yeah, her uncle didn't help her condition for sure.
No, that's true.
Right, and then I guess the whole thing about parents' effect on people. Yeah, I mean, can we see shades of or mirrors of Holly's mom and Brady's mom in each other? No, Holly's mom is not
sexualizing her.
Abusing her sexually, but she's abusing her emotionally, right? She's trying to take care of things for her daughter that she thinks she can't handle. Brady's mom is trying to is Brady's mom trying to give him things that she didn't think he couldn't get on his own, or is she trying to get things from him? I think there are similarities. There are some similarities between the two in the way they deal with their kids, which is I think what you were saying. But I had a 2-year-old screaming at me at the time. So
yeah, I mean there are, although I would think that I personally think the differences outweigh the similarities. Whereas the Brady and his mother had, at least by the end, definitely a codependent relationship in a way that Holly and her mother don't. And it seemed to me that Holly's mother was more concerned with what other people would think than about Holly herself, and that's how she sort of focused on Holly is how does she present to the world as opposed to anything she needed herself. Whereas Brady's mother, in her own twisted, freakish way, appeared to be more concerned about Brady than the world.
Yeah, I think Brady's mom almost shut them off from the world.
Yes.
Yeah. It's they're both very interesting relationships.
Mm-hmm. They both led to some sort of mental illness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen King always has stuff to say about the mom.
Wait, say that again, Jessica?
He always has stuff to say about moms. So
Yeah.
It's such a common theme. And I think it's because reality bears it out, right? I mean, a lot of his choices are really real to us because we've seen it. We've seen kids grow up super weird because their moms like let them nurse until they were 5 or something. You know, like there's just little things that are just really. Yeah.
What are you trying to tell us about your mother?
Hey, I said super weird.
This is a safe space. 243 people are not listening in.
Currently no other viewers. Nobody knew about this before it started.
all right.
We could consider adding that in the future.
A live studio audience.
Live studio. Just chime in. We're live streaming.
With a laugh track for all of our jokes.
Yes, please.
We don't need no stinking laugh track.
I think I have. So I have a control room here, so I can like increase your volumes and everything.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's awesome.
In an old version, I used to have. I could like put glasses on people and stuff, but I don't have that anymore.
All right. So my next question is, what is the book saying about the criminal justice system, and then what's it saying different than from The Outsider? Because we talked a lot about this in The Outsider, and I'm kind of wondering if Stephen King's kind of having a theme of basically shaming the justice system. Not maybe shaming is too harsh of a word, but like noting the flaws in the justice system, because I thought how the book sort of pointed out that they really didn't believe Olivia, and they spent absolutely no time really considering believing her when she said that she locked her car, and it wasn't something that they really looked into. They didn't even talk to anyone else in the force if it would be possible to get into a car that was locked, and like all of these other things.
The missed clues.
And how he, ultimately looking back was like, that's bad, detective work, and, kind of opened up this poor woman to being, publicly shamed, and all of these people were not just Mr. Mercedes who ended up, really zeroing in on her, but, the public at large was saying that she kind of was partially at fault for the killings. And I'm just kind of wondering, and like I said, I haven't read the other 2 books, if this is kind of going to be a pattern to say, that the American justice system, from Stephen King's point of view, has significant flaws, and that this is something we should be watching out for. I'm not sure what he's trying to say here.
It's an interesting question, because when reading Mr. Mercedes, I didn't view it as sort of a commentary on sort of justice system or anything. I looked at it more as this sort of human nature that, people you don't like, you tend to disbelieve, and you tend to ignore, and you don't spend as much time thinking about them or their points. But now that you say it, what I see as sort of a unifying theme between the two of them is this sort of pervasive rush to justice, and rush to condemn, that you see in both of them. That, Olivia, even if she committed the sin of leaving her key in the car, I mean, that's but that's not a crime. That's not, it's a horrible circumstance that it was then stolen to be used for a horrible thing, but that's not on her. It's not her fault. It's not her. Even if she did leave the key in the car, that should have never been on her. There should have never been the condemnation of her that there was, that you can so easily see there being. It wasn't unrealistic at all. And then obviously in The Outsider, which is slightly different because they had sort of this overwhelming evidence that this guy did it, despite the alibi, which they again didn't look into at first, but there was justification for what they did in some ways. It wasn't that they found some random guy off the street and just publicly, tried him. But there is very easily this sort of rush to condemn, the first person, the face of it, and Olivia got caught up in it because there was no perp. They didn't have the guy, so there was nobody else to satisfy this condemnation except for her, and so then therefore she bore the brunt of it.
Yeah. I agree. You said there was one word that jumped out to me before you went in a different direction. That was human. The way I looked at it is Stephen King is like, this is a system, but it's a system made up of and carried out by people, individuals, and it's those people, it's those individuals with individual biases, with individual agendas, maybe with individual perceptions, even that sometimes perverts the system, whether they mean to or not. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think that can lead to a rush to judgment. It can lead to miscarriage of justice. But I didn't look at him. I guess in either case, I really didn't. In either book, I didn't look at him maligning the system, just saying that it's not perfect.
It's definitely flawed. I agree with you, John, that Mr. Mercedes didn't really seem to focus on the system as much as The Outsider. The Outsider was like, here's the court system, here's police work that needed to be done, and it shows you all the different interrogations and all this stuff. It's very methodical. Mr. Mercedes was more just focused on the police work, right? Just the order of law and order. But yeah, I didn't see I like the human error element too, because I think that's what Stephen King was trying to show, is that it wasn't about all these rules being in place and all of those rules were wrong. Like, it wasn't an unfair trial because the evidence was real against, in The Outsider. But this definitely felt like we kind of do things the wrong way. And like you're saying, the speed was probably a huge part of that, where everybody's rushing to a conclusion, trying to get it solved, this is their guy. And
because it was such a heinous crime.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I guess in both cases. It's like, okay, we know this was your car. We know you probably left the key in. Done. All right. Let's move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the human nature part of it because I think he's always trying to tell us that, show us that, either like how would you react, like trying to get us to see, we would like to think that we wouldn't, hate on Olivia, but we probably would have. It's kind of like how I was trying to think during the book. Like if that Facebook story popped up or something about this heinous crime, it's like, oh, this woman left her key in the car. I mean, I definitely would have been like, I can't say definitely, but I feel pretty strongly I would have been like, well, she wasn't the one who actually ran those people down.
Right.
But
that's the rational part of your mind, though.
But I feel in my heart that I probably, before this story and thinking more about it, would have been like, but he wouldn't have had the vehicle if you hadn't left the key in the car, you know?
Right.
And so, it's just, he's always trying to get us to think about like that baser part of humans that, isn't nice,
Mm-hmm.
And he does a good job at that.
Yeah. So many of the dystopians and so many of the small towns with a dark underbelly are about the darkness that's in all of us.
Yeah.
The misdeeds that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It reminds me of the old Twilight Zone episode. I think it was called "The Lights Went Out on Maple Street" or something like that. But we read it. We read the screenplay in class in English, and it was just a simple like how quickly just turning off the electricity on at one street, turning it off for the whole street and then turning on each, couple of different houses here and there, and how quickly it just all devolves into people yelling and screaming, and I think at some point somebody shoots somebody like in a matter of hours, like how quickly it can go. And it's all the same idea that there's this idyllic nature that we all like to believe in, but give just one little knock to some people and it all tumbles like dominoes.
It's a very old story.
It is.
What's it going to take? What that tiny little push that to push all of us over the edge.
And what's so great is how well he writes it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like we missed an opportunity here, guys. Halloween's in 2 days. And we can hold our own little experiment here. Just all of a sudden your doors lock and now it's the purge, and we'll see everybody's true humanity.
I was actually thinking when Lauren walked in, I was actually thinking I should have tried to prank you guys and had like Lauren kill me or we could have had like a knockdown, drag out fight off camera and then just come back.
So I think we're probably all mandatory reporters here, so it could have been that. But yeah, you should definitely prank us sometime. I'm for it.
It's not Halloween anymore. It would have been the perfect time.
We can meet again in 2 days. I'm ready to talk about the next one.
I'm gonna need a few more days.
Just like what? Or what?
I'm in the middle of another book. I got to finish that first.
Fair.
All right. So one person that we haven't talked that much about that I personally loved was Jerome. We got to talk some Jerome here. Loved him. I did feel a little bit like weirded out with his talk.
Tyrone Feelgood.
And I was like, oh man. But my nephew, my 18-year-old nephew's like that sometimes. He immigrated over here from Jamaica, and I'm like, he's much cooler than I am. He has Snapchat. If I have problems using it, I'll ask him. So I was just kind of like, what? But on the other hand, I was like, I want to be friends with you as like an adult. Like, I just kind of was like, I wish people of that age thought I was cool. So I thought he was just a cool kid and really smart. So I was really, really impressed with him. But I did think that once he gets to college, that character of his is going to get him like smacked down a little bit. some kids are gonna like beat him up or like something. I don't know. I don't know where it goes, I guess.
I think because he's black, he can get away with it with anybody except other black people. And I think many of them would be okay with it as long as they looked at it as parody or satire. Whereas Stephen King writing that character, I feel like could come under a lot more scrutiny.
Yeah.
You know,
Felt like Tarantino using the N-word in all of his movies.
right?
It's a little bit like, are you just doing it because you can get away with it here and you think it's like shocking? I mean, that wasn't Stephen King's aim, I don't think, but like it was jarring, and it was like he acknowledged that it was weird, and he had Bill say, "Oh, you know, don't use that character anymore," and like Jerome kind of stops a little bit, but it's still like, why did you have to put that in there? Why don't you just like, it's almost like slave talk is what it seemed like, because he's telling his boss, he's talking to his boss like this, and that's where it kind of got weird for me. It's like almost the whole field speak. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading way too much into it, or I was looking for a problem, but
yeah,
it felt wrong.
It does kind of feel like are we trying to assign meaning where King was just like, I think this would be a funny way for this kid to, you know, deal with who he is. And
you're probably exactly right. I don't think he was trying to say anything larger, and I don't think he was being malicious, but it just felt weird.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe he was like testing himself. Maybe he was like, I'm going to do this and see if anybody like, tries to burn down my house. And, I mean, I don't remember seeing any news stories. So,
wow. Test pass.
I felt like exactly what you're talking about with him, you know, being his employee and like mowing his lawn and stuff. I got the feeling that was kind of exactly the reason why Bill was like, when you come back here to do your work, I don't want to hear that character anymore. Don't come back as him. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's kind of, I had that same feeling too. I was kind of like, you know, it's kind of weird like that. But it could also be because he was like old and was kind of like wigged out by it. I mean, you know, when my 18-year-old nephew talks in new words that I've never heard, I'm like, what? And then I feel really old, and I'm like, when is that the new thing? So it could have been that too. Hard to say. But in general, I loved the kid because I thought he was super smart and really had his shit together and actually gave a shit about his sister.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, was helping out this old guy on his street and had good grades. And but also, you know, could hang out on the other side. But just kind of, they also Stephen King did talk a little bit about how it was hard to fit in with peers, because he was like, do I go with the smart crowd? Do I not? You know, he touched on it a little bit, but I really liked that character.
Sure.
Yeah, it was one of those things. It was reading it was like, I feel like Tyrone Feelgood should bother me, but it didn't. It just, I don't know. I didn't look too deeply into it. I could easily see how, you know, it could be taken the wrong way or be considered very problematic, and not without reason. But for me personally, in the moment, I was, I rolled with it. It was a bit of levity in a story that was light on levity.
That's very fair.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have to remember we're talking about a writer who got away with having 6 10-year-olds have an orgy.
Oh,
Good
God.
point.
Let's bring
I
back
feel
You
that.
block that out of your mind.
I feel like
Do block it out of my mind.
this doesn't even come close.
I will say, for the first time, I think, in a Stephen King book, like they always sort of joke, and I don't know if any of you listen to it was a podcast, and I forget the name of it, the Losers Club, I think it is.
Yeah.
They always sort of talk about the pound cake and his overtly graphic sexual nature. And there was at one point there was a chapter break or some kind of break right before Bill and Janie had sex, and it was like, oh, they entered the apartment or something, and like they didn't have coffee till hours later, or some kind of line left off as. And I remember thinking, like, I sort of knew what was coming, and I knew, like, any other author, that would have been the end of it. It would have stopped there, and you would have moved past, and you would have gone on and saw what happened after. But no, then we went to the bedroom and saw the set. Like,
Oh yeah.
we would have skipped right over it with that nice little, like, oh, and they had coffee hours later. Like, you got what was going on, but he had to go back and actually fill in the picture.
And like describe how it worked.
Yeah.
Because Bill was older, and how great it was for him. It's like, dude, do you need all of this in a mystery or an awesome like murder procedural? Like, come on.
Right.
I don't know. I guess it gives it a little more weight when she dies, and maybe that's part of his motivation, but I don't know.
Maybe it's just because this is top of mind for me right now. But I say ask that of George R.R. Martin and the producers of Game of Thrones. I think you'll find the answer is yes, we do need it.
I think with some authors, you just have to, know it's coming and go with it.
But for George R.R. Martin, are they like overweight, balding, I guess in that case, warriors who are having sex? Is that what we're going for?
Hey, older weight balding people need loving too. Don't be mean.
That's very true.
I think George R.R. Martin went the other way. Everybody is just like ridiculously beautiful.
That's right. From what I had heard, everybody is like ridiculously gorgeous.
Well, there are a couple. There's like there's some sex scenes with Tyrion, who's he's not a catch.
I did want to.
I'm running out of time, guys. So.
Okay.
Well, I'm actually 25 minutes.
Actually, you're over. You're over, aren't you?
But I'm having fun. So.
Hey, well,
I can maybe hang out for another question or so.
Yeah.
I just want to say there was one thing I noticed that I thought was a great subversion of the usual with him. There was a line when Bill leaves his house to go with Jeannie to visit her mother. It said something to the effect of he left with no premonition that he wouldn't be back, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And even though I'd read the book before, I'd forgotten most of the details. It's been a long time. And so I'm thinking, he's not going to be back. Like, what's going to happen? Like, I don't remember. Like, what's going to happen to either him or this house? And then he goes, and then like he talks about like going back before going to see Jerome later. I'm like, no, he's not going to get to go back. This line. And then he went back, and it was all normal. And I was like, what the hell? It was great. I was so primed like for something bad to happen, and then nothing happened. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the subversion of my expectations.
Yeah.
But I mean,
wasn't it Janie that had that thought?
No,
it was Bill.
I remember making a note of that, and I think I actually went back a couple times. Like I think I dog-eared the page to be like, wait a minute, and
exactly.
And I think what happened was he spent the night with Janie.
Oh, so it's dying.
Oh, okay.
That's right. Awesome.
So that, yes, it was him not coming back tonight, But yes, John, I did the same thing. I'm like, is the house? I know there's 2 more books. Is like a big sinkhole gonna open up and like the house is gonna be lost? Like what the hell?
Oh, that's a good catch. I completely missed that.
But no, I had that noted, and I went back. I'm like, when's he not? He went back. He's back. What's going on?
Exactly.
Oh, he's an old fat man who got to have sex.
All right, I missed that connection, but now that you say it, that makes sense. But
Awesome.
Yeah. So just the last questions I have are just, the standard, what you like best, what you like worst about the book. If anybody has anything right off the top of their head.
I think the scene setting for Brady's basement was probably my favorite part. I really like computers, and I really like voice commands. And then the fact that every time you got to go down there, it was pretty impactful. Like something, like he would be just logging into his computer, but then you learn these control words and chaos and all that stuff. And then later on in the book, you like see the remnants of his bomb making, and you find out a little bit more about him. So like every time that the book took you to the basement, I thought it was really fascinating, and I was locked in. That's something that I figured you guys wouldn't say, so I figured.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
I liked everything that happened before page 436.
Where's my copy?
I know. Now I'm like, what happened on page 436?
I read it on my phone. There's no way I'll be able to figure that out.
That's the last page of the book in my edition.
Uh,
I really enjoyed this. I thought I felt like it took everything that I love about Stephen King and everything I love about procedurals like this. I like Thomas Harris and Silence of the Lambs, and I like Crichton, and I felt like it was Stephen King doing the best job of this kind of fiction, and I hope there's lots more to come.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the sort of the team, Bill, Holly, and Jerome. I liked the structure and the what they each brought to the table, and how different they all were, and how they sort of all helped improve each other, and just I really enjoyed how Jerome and Holly sort of clicked and interacted, and how I really like that sort of Trinity dynamic.
Definitely agree that they like lean on each other in a really, it feels really right when they're all in the same room, and like Jerome supporting Holly, Holly's thinking about one detail, and then you've got the veteran knowledge of Bill there. Definitely agree with you.
And the idea of the 3 of them, like I'm curious to see how it progresses. Why 3? Why could it have just been Bill and Jerome? What does Holly bring to it? What does Jerome bring to Bill and Holly that they couldn't have done on their own, kind of thing? It is, that I'm curious to see how it unfolds.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I liked, even though I don't read a lot of procedurals, although I have read all of the Thomas Harris books, but I really loved, I was on sort of the edge of my seat for all of the chat messaging back and forth, and gearing up for the chat messaging, like, oh, I need to put myself in this psychological mindset, and this is what I need to say to really like rev them up.
Yeah.
And then his reactions to them, and the way he just like totally would flip out. I just loved that, and the way Stephen King would have it so that it was like one chat message, and you didn't know what the message said yet, and just the way that was used to kind of keep the tension up.
Mhm.
And then learning about that whole chat thing, which apparently is an actual thing, was really interesting too.
That was one thing that jumped out at me, and I never actually did the research. But like when he first said "Under Debbie's Blue Umbrella," I thought, okay, he's alluding to he's using a nickname for an actual chat site. And then when I found out the chat site was actually called Under Debbie's Blue Umbrella, I think I was a little disappointed. I'm like, it's got to be called like chatverse.com, and it just happens to have the blue umbrella, or Debbie's chat or whatever. I'm like, wait, it's actually Under Debbie's Blue. That's stupid.
Well, is there a meaning there? Is there was he trying to say something with that name, or did he just come up with some random words and throw it together?
I don't know. Under Debbie's Blue Umbrella. Were there any
It's on the cover of the book I bought. It became like a very cool image.
Yeah, mine is too.
But it's also kind of like, now that you say it like that, it probably should have been Chatverse or Chathole or something like that. It doesn't seem like something a marketing person would choose.
Right? Yeah, I thought it was like what people just they go, oh, I'll meet you under Debbie's Blue Umbrella, and like if you don't know that that's Chatverse, you're gonna be like, oh my god, where am I supposed to go?
Yeah, it made me think of like the Matrix, where it's like follow the white punny or whatever, and it's supposed to be some secret thing, and then it's like, wait, oh no, that's what it's actually called. Yeah, you're right. All right. Things you dislike the most? Sounds like, Mike, you don't have anything. You're just...
How the hell did he get a ticket to the concert last minute? That thing had to be sold out for weeks.
No, StubHub exists.
Yeah, I guess.
He didn't say that. He didn't say use StubHub.
No, he I thought he did. He didn't, not StubHub, but I thought he definitely bought from a broker.
Yeah,
I don't remember. If he did, I missed that.
I think he 100% bought from a broker.
But he also, it was a handicap or accessible chairs or accessible ticket. So he probably could have just asked and gotten something too. If he really tried.
Yeah, that aspect of it probably made it a lot easier for him. But the way I remembered it was a reseller.
We already touched on my least favorite thing, which was the, in my opinion, pointless sex in the middle of the book. That just kind of took me out of it and made me like, all right, I guess we are reading Stephen King. But that's a minor quibble in the amazingness of this book.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything I really didn't like. Maybe I'm just, maybe because it was different, I overlooked any little things. I really liked it.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Finders Keepers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I really liked the book. I would have liked a little bit more about the I was like revved up after the I'm trying to look and see how many pages it was. Just like a few pages on the job fair. I would have liked just a little bit more, I guess, or not at all. I was like, I'm about this, and then I don't know, maybe a little bit more about how, I don't know, it was so great the beginning, but I just needed a little bit more. But then maybe it wouldn't have been so good. So that's a minor quibble. Because I was like, oh God, why did this happen? And then they're like, oh, that happened months ago. And I was like, what? And then you don't really find out how it all happened with him using a mask. I was like, how did he get away with this bullshit? And then that's another just great writing technique, how you don't really find out what happened throughout until you have to read the whole book and piece it together.
Mhm.
But I almost wish we spent a little bit more time like in the aftermath, instead of just like the headlights or something. But then I probably would have been complaining about that bullshit too.
I mean, now that you mentioned the beginning, I forgot that I had a very visceral reaction to the very beginning. And what happened was, when he killed, for lack of a better word, the three main characters of the book on like page 10, I was very upset. I was pissed off. I was like, what the hell? You had me hooked, and now I've got to rediscover things all over again. That might be the only thing I didn't like at first. But of course I overcame that, and yeah.
You overcame.
We all did.
Yeah.
So you guys can get started on Finders Keepers tonight. And no, this is great. I do have to run, but thanks everybody for being here and having the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you for recording it for us.
Yeah, I'm more the camera guy. The moderator would be
video moderator. Video moderator.
Yes,
Awesome.
Yes. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.